I started on March 30th, I think, March 30th, 2020. So
Oh,
literally,
wow.
exactly everything
Was it
was
like to
just,
the day or how long?
I was like, because the thing is that I started and is when everything was starting to unravel.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to actually go and meet my teams in different parts of the world. Because I had a team reporting to me in Asia, in Japan, in UK, and US. And I was supposed to travel around to just at least meet them at least once a year. And they told me that I couldn't, and that it was just like, wait, what's actually going on? And so I ended up working with my teams for 4 years without having met them.
Welcome to 99 Humans. My name is Jeff LaCusta, curious coach and Wall Street Journal best-selling author, striving to understand how little things generate big impact.
And I'm Nadia Carta, tech executive and lifestyle coach with a mission to transform lives and corporations by kindling hearts to generate a zeal for life.
Each week, we investigate stories about the human side of leadership to re-energize your spirit and help you become a stronger leader.
Because the reality is that leadership is messy, goofy, challenging, but always human.
Thanks for spending time with us today. Let's dive in. All right. Hello, Alexia. Thank you for joining.
Hi.
So glad that you are here. You have an incredibly impressive resume, which makes you the perfect candidate for 99 Humans because we're really trying to get beyond some of these impressive bullet points and accomplishments to understand the humans on the other side of all of this. But let me rattle off just a couple here because you do have some really impressive experience. So Alexia has managed teams and marketing budgets at both unicorn startups and Fortune 500 companies. And as a big video gamer, I love seeing your LinkedIn posts that are about PlayStation hitting all-time highs and cool Spider-Man movie success and really amazing things that Sony is doing. But you've also worked at Masterclass, Decathlon, and other very impressive companies. We're so grateful that you're here with 99 Humans today. Where does this podcast find you in the world first?
At the moment, I'm living in New York. I moved around a bit more than a year ago to the city, and I was previously in San Francisco. And previously to that, I was in London. And before that, I am from Spain, so I was there.
A global citizen. What do you think of as home after all those places?
And what do I think about what? Sorry?
As home. What's home?
Spain. It's always going to be home with the ham.
I love it. Nice. When's your next trip going to be back to Spain?
Probably over the summertime.
Yeah, wait until it's beautiful.
Yes.
Sounds excellent. Well, Alexia, tell us a little bit about Sony right now, and then maybe we can dig into one more specific story about kind of human leadership. But first, just give us a little bit of an overview of what it means to market for such a well-known company.
So my role at PlayStation has been managing the delivery team for the console store and the subscription services that they had. That was my role initially, and then over the years, I have ended up working more closely with the B2C arm of the business or the direct to consumer side of the business. And then in 2023, I also took over some responsibilities around the go to market for the PlayStation 5. But I had five responsibilities, which were managing around $100 million a year across 45 markets, go to market motion across these markets, more than 100 campaigns a year, and a brand and performance marketing because I have a background in performance marketing. But at PlayStation, I was also the territory director for US and Japan. Measurement and innovation, I had a marketing analyst reporting into me because I had some technical background as well that was useful for this role. And then ownership of the relationship with the territories, because the way that PlayStation worked was basically we had a global team that was managing the majority of the budget and then launching campaigns across all these markets. But we also worked very closely with the territories that would launch more brand campaigns across their different markets to be closer to the audiences that they were marketing to. And that's it.
Well, just that, just very straightforward. I think one of the things that sticks out to me, which is both impressive and something I'm curious to hear more about, is just how sort of widespread the responsibility set is, right? Like obviously $100 million, it's a big number, but you're also talking about 45 different unique markets, which all have then I'm sure sub-markets within those markets. And you probably slice and dice your audience a million different ways. But I'm curious at a company like Sony and like PlayStation, how much of the role is sort of navigating the complexity of business, your own business versus, in quotes, maybe doing the job, which is activating the $100 million to get impact.
I think that you need to get really good at multitasking.
Yeah. Why do you laugh? Like, what's the laugh in response to?
Because I think it's something that it takes time for you to develop in your career.
Mm.
I think that when you always start small, right? Like in my case, I started with one single marketing channel on the paid media side. And over the years, I acquired more and more channels on the paid media side, then owned, then earned, then shared. Um, and leading teams was something that happened very early in my career. So how did you balance like the amount of responsibilities that you have plus leading teams and then leading cross-functional teams? So you need to get really good at how you manage your time. And that's an art on itself, in my opinion.
Yeah. What do you enjoy most? Is it what piece of this puzzle do you like doing the most?
I think for me, leading teams is the part that I enjoy the most, definitely. Leading international teams is the part that I have learned to enjoy very much since I would say like the past 7 years or so. But yeah.
You said learned to enjoy. So I'm curious. Seems like maybe it wasn't always that way.
I would say like I mean every single thing that you learn comes with a stage where you need to get out of your comfort zone. And for me it was learning about the different cultures and how to set them up for success and so on when you work in different organizations, right? And so for me, there was a learning process, but I learned to really enjoy it through it, and then now it's the only thing that I want to do.
Hmm.
Um, I want to continue leading international teams for sure
Why?
because I really enjoy the diversity. I really enjoy. I have lived and worked in different countries, and it's not just been Spain, UK, and US. I've lived in Germany. I've lived in France and in Portugal, and I really like being able to unite teams under a set of goals for a business in a way that makes them feel very close to each other, despite the time zones, despite the cultural differences. Yeah.
You're saying nice sounding, almost like resume lines of like learning and getting outside your comfort zone. That sounds all nice, right? Like I'm sure this has been just a smooth sail to all of these incredible impacts. But help me because you're shaking your head and laughing here as well. Help me understand one of these times, like when you were younger, when you were given responsibility outside of your comfort zone. Make it real. What did that actually look like, and what's hard about that?
Um, okay, I'm gonna give you the hardest situation that I've put myself into multiple times, which is learning languages. There was a point in my career where I wasn't able to pay for college. And so there was a point earlier on in my life that I wasn't able to pay for college. And the one way that I thought about doing it is, what about if I go to different countries and learn these languages at the same time that I'm earning some money that I could use to pay for college? Because if you wanted to do a waitress job in a different country, they would pay you more than in your own, right?
Mm.
But so that's how I paid for college. But the hardest part is that you're going into a country with no knowledge of the language, doing whatever job there is. In my case, it was being a waitress. And just dealing with the fact that people are going to not treat you the kindest way sometimes because you're not able to communicate, right? And putting yourself in that uncomfortable situation, and it's not something that I would recommend to anyone. You need to be really strong for that.
Yeah.
Um, it's really tough, right? So putting yourself in that position and then going through it and actually coming back to Spain after 3 months of learning how to speak French, and then being told in college, because I was studying travel and tourism, being told in college, hey, actually, I don't know what you've done over the summer. You speak fluent French. You may not need to take all the classes that we have in terms of, in French, because you already know how to speak French. So here's the opportunity for you to take the last test in the next 4 years that you're going to have in French. And then if you pass it, then you don't have to take French anymore. And what I did with that time is I was actually able to put it towards getting a full-time job in Spain in marketing. So what I mean by this is that it takes a lot of strength to go through uncomfortable situations for you to be able to learn and take yourself in the direction that you want to take in your career. And that made me a very competitive candidate in that market in Spain, because everyone was still trying to learn English, and I spoke 5 languages. You know what I mean?
Wow. What a cool story. It really does highlight this point of it being worth going outside your comfort zone. So those 3 months in France learning a language ended up giving you time back at university, which you spent going into the field that you now work in at a very impressive level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So why did you do this? Like, what gave you the desire? I mean, I understand maybe, going to school, but there are many different ways to get that job done, and you picked, to your own, credit and words, you picked one that's uncomfortable.
Something that I would recommend everyone doing very early on in their career is to build what I call a career path document. So I put it together very early on in my career, where I was like, okay, what do I want to do in the next 20 years? And it's
You
again,
had a career plan document that long ago.
Yes.
Wow. Where the hell did you hear about this idea? I mean, like, most people, I feel like, are playing flip cup, drinking beer or something, and you're making a career plan document. That's very impressive, but I'm curious, how did you even hear about this, and where did that idea come from?
It was my husband. So he's the one that recommended, like, why don't you start thinking about what is it that you want to do in the next several years and how you're going to achieve it. So he was definitely the origin of some really, really good ideas I've had in my career. I need to give him credit for that.
Nice.
But he suggested it, and that I started putting something very basic together. But what I knew is that, okay, in order for me to pay for college, what can I do? When there's no funds, what do you do? I need to move to London. Okay, how am I going to do that? Do I want to stay in travel and tourism? Do I want to have more variety of industry? And then I decided to take on a master's on communication. So I would have 2 options if I ever wanted to get one or the other. Which, funny enough, during the pandemic, if I had stayed in just one industry, travel and tourism, I would have been out of a job during the pandemic. You know what I mean? So it's always been about, like, what options can I have? So I'm always in a position where I cannot pay for something anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What does that look like for you now? When you think about, like, having options and making sure that you're future focused, has that fallen to the back seat now as you found success in your career, or is that still something you're prioritizing at the forefront?
It's always going to be a priority, because you never know. You never know. I mean, in the case, who would have expected a pandemic? But you just really never know. And because of that, it's always going to be in my mind, how do you build options for yourself? In my case, the direction that I decided to take was to work for multiple industries, and just get really good at being able to drive growth, no matter the industry that I work in, no matter the size of the business, no matter the business model that it is, B2B or B2C. That just, to me, it just doesn't matter. It's about, how do I grow a business, or how do I meet the goals of the business at the end of the day.
You seem very good at speaking this cross-industry language. I mean, already in just a few minutes, it's obvious that you're very adept at translating your skills and experience and the things that you've accomplished in a language that resonates across multiple fields, that would help you have that optionality. And something that I notice as a coach and as a manager is that skill sometimes is quite rare. That I'll talk to individuals who have spent a decade in a field, And, of course, it's on a bad day, but they'll come and they'll say, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know how to write a resume bullet. I have no idea how to, like, what am I even doing every day I'm like, all right, I get that as a joke. But on the other hand, man, you're really limiting the options by not communicating what that actually looks like. And I'm curious, do you see a similar challenge out in the world and the circles that you run in, or maybe as marketers, this is something that comes more naturally to you?
I mean, I didn't know that was unique, but I have seen a lot of people struggling with it. I think that for me, the most important thing, or the one that I see being the most common, is people don't understand their audiences. And I think that if you are, the way that you talk to a tech business needs to be different from a real estate business, or needs to be, they're going to have different things that they need to achieve, and because of that, you need to understand what they need, or where they want to go, and then adapt your message, or adapt the way that you highlight yourself as a relevant candidate, or a relevant employee to them. But yeah.
A little bit of a kind of back to story time question, but I'm curious for the last challenge that you had to overcome, either in your role or in personal life, that kind of impacted work somehow. But I think hearing you speak is so impressive that, part of this rehumanization is like, yeah, but you've got challenges too. And you get on the other side and you learn and you're outside your comfort zone. But what does that look like? We heard what it looked like as you were on your way to become, an impressive director at Sony. But what does it look like when you're there? How do those challenges either change or stay the same?
Um, I think that one of the biggest challenge, not just for me, but also for any people manager that was leading teams worldwide, was during the pandemic. I know this is probably going to be a very common topic, but it was, in a way, it was a little bit heartbreaking. Because first of all, like, I started with PlayStation. I started on March 30th, I think, March 30th, 2020. So
Oh,
literally,
wow.
exactly everything
Was
was
it like
just,
to the day or how long?
I was like, because the thing is that I started, and is when everything was starting to unravel.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to actually go and meet my teams in different parts of the world, because I had a team reporting to me in Asia, in Japan, in UK, and US. And I was supposed to travel around to just at least meet them at least once a year. And they told me that I couldn't, and that it was just like, wait, what's actually going on? And so I ended up working with my teams for 4 years without having met them.
Wow.
Well, actually, no, I did meet my team in the UK, in the US, but Asia and Japan, I was never able to meet them. So the question, going through all of this, you need to think that we were all losing people. We were losing family members, we were losing friends. It was really, really, and many of us, we were not, well, in my case, it was a bit different, but many people were not able to get out of their homes for a long time, right? Their apartments, they were like
Yep.
between four walls all day, all night, right? And so it was a really, really tough time. And at the end of the day, whether we wanted to hear it or not, work is 8 hours a day. It's a long time in a day where you just cannot ignore it, right? So taking my team from, feeling isolated to feeling like a united team during that time was something that I really, really wanted to do, and I was able to do, just so we would be able to support each other, even across time zones, even across cultures. To me, that was very important back then.
What do you think was unique about that sort of multinational element that you were juggling at the same time compared to somebody with, a fully, let's say, US based team going through COVID?
I was able to understand their point of views, I think, because I have lived and worked in different countries. I was able to understand where they were coming from. But it's not just a cultural thing. It's also understanding or knowing your teams very well individually, and understanding what what were their aspirations, what they wanted to do, what they liked doing, hobbies and so on. But then, day in, day out, like, how are you doing? You know what I mean? It wasn't just a cultural a cultural alignment. So what I ended up doing was actually like putting my teams together. So I started joining Japan and Asia in the same calls, where historically they had not even talked to each other, even they were part of the same team. And then UK and US joined them together, and we would be not only discussing business, but we were also like playing games together. I don't know if you remember, but like at some point, you'd have like really large businesses like just setting up like team building exercises virtually. So
Yeah.
that was part of us too. But yeah.
We played some Animal Crossing New Horizons in my team. We're like, let's meet up in David's world or whoever it is.
Oh, same for us. We were in the gaming industry, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. So I think what you're sharing with us is just how strongly you showed up for your team and the whole person, and you were an incredible leader for an incredible time. But at the same time, you're also going through a pandemic. So
Yeah.
how was that? Like my experience of the pandemic, which inspired starting this podcast, was feeling like responsibilities were really kind of piled on middle managers, where I got a little bit bitter. Like if I'm really honest, I'm like, while I want to show up for my team 100%, I'm also like, can somebody show up for me, please? Like, we're dying over here. I'm curious if any of that resonates, or if you felt like you were able to juggle your own well-being along with your whole team's no problem.
I think for me is that things were moving so quickly, but there was that there were so many businesses that didn't have any guidance. Like a lot of people managers, it doesn't matter if it was at Sony or any other business, like they were not getting a lot of guidance. So um, I just decided to do my own thing. And what I mean by this is no one was telling me to like join my teams. No one was telling me to have these team building exercises. No one was telling me to. There's a lot of things that we didn't receive guidance on, and I just decided just to take it on my own hands and just say, I want to make sure that my team are okay, and this is what I'm going to do. And there are some businesses will put some guidance around like the sort of like check-ins that you should have with your teams, like one-to-ones and quarterly meetings and the annual reviews. I decided to just build my own. So, and I wanted to make sure that my team was okay, because it was an exceptional time and an exceptional. It was a very unusual situation, and without no guidance, I think that the best thing that you can do is just build your own world or build your own culture within the team and just go with that. Obviously, you need to cross-check things, and I had regular catch-ups with my team together to understand what was working for them, what was not working for them, if they wanted to change anything. So listening is a huge part of it as well. It's not just I'm going to set up my own thing and that's it, regardless of what anyone thinks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was built with the team.
Where did that come from? Like, that is such confidence and just leadership at the end of the day. But where do you think those instincts came from that you rose to meet such an incredible moment so well? Because I do feel like a lot of leaders during that time were sort of looking for permission, like, should I do this? There is such a vacuum of what to do because nobody knew what to do. And so you either rose to meet the moment as you did, or sat around looking around for somebody to tell you what the heck to do.
Yeah, I think that for me, I think it was also seeing how things were affecting my team, that I was like, okay, I think I'm just going to be telling what I'm going to be doing. And if they tell me not to continue, then I can stop. But I rather just take action, obviously like reasonable action, and always being careful with what you're doing and being respectful and so on. And asking my team, like, what do you want and so on. And then if anything, if I had to change anything, then I would, right? But no one really said anything. If anything, it was something that was taken very positively, and the team. I mean, just to give you an example, like the satisfaction of the team, that they do. Many businesses do the ENPS scoring surveys with the employees. It went up 20% year on year. Like my team was very, very happy, and to me, like, there is validation that needs to come from leadership, but for me, the important thing was also validation from my team. And not only that, like that eventually turned to be something that was exceptional, like very, very unique. Many people managers had not implemented that in many businesses, not just Sony. And that was something that caught the attention of SVP and VP level. And I ended up working in, randomly ended up working in strategic initiatives related to future of work,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with marketing, but it's something that I've always felt really passionate about.
Well, and it had a lot to do with what the company's need was at the time. I mean, figuring out that was still is paying huge dividends, but especially then it was the only way to get work done. I noticed, and I'll put a hypothesis forward, and I'm curious what you think. One of the secret ingredients that you mentioned was call it psychological safety or knowing your team as individuals, but you say very easily, well, if they didn't like what I was doing, they would just tell me. And a very common challenge is that actually that's not true. People don't always tell their leaders feedback or what's working, what's not working. And that is the downfall of so many leaders who are living in echo chambers or who are. And I'm curious if you agree that that was a secret sauce, like having a real relationship that meant, yes, you were getting like very real time, like, yeah, do more of that, do less of that, that made all the difference for you.
Yes, definitely. I think that building a close relationship with your team, building trust is what I think. Building trust and collaboration, and then seeing that I was doing it for them meant something, to the point where they would be able to see me as someone approachable when they were in a challenges. They were able to talk to me about it. Don't be wrong, the ENPS scoring survey is anonymous at the end of the day, and at least I wasn't able to see in any business who was saying what. So there's always that space, that quote unquote safe space, if you wanted to call it that. But my relationship with my team was very good in the way that they would be able to tell me these things themselves, and I would be able to take action. Because one thing that I think is very important is that if you receive feedback, you need to take action. So that's something that I always did, and that's why I was able to get continuous feedback from my team, because I was actually saying, if you're telling me something is something that I can actually implement, then I will do it.
I love that. I think that's actually so obvious and so rarely done. Like, we do ask for feedback and then oftentimes like, great, thank you very much, and continue on. Like, do something, take action. That's an amazing tip here. But when you say, building trust and collaboration is key, are there any other sort of tactical tips that you have for folks who go, yeah, I want to build trust and collaboration? How the heck do you do it?
So I think again, it goes back to just building your own culture in the team. And what I mean by this is that you're going to get some guidance from the business on how people managers should be setting up in this specific case, their catch-ups with their team. But actually, like, the only guidance that I had was the only must-have is that you need to have your annual reviews. And I was like, okay, but I want to have more than that. Like, I want to get to know them, right? And not only know them, but also, like, we also need to, from a business perspective, you also need to make sure that they're, meeting goals and so on, right? Like, it's not just getting to know them and that's it. That sounds very dreamy, but it's, there's businesses there as well. But what I'm trying to say is that at that point, I decided, okay, this is the structure that I'm going to have. I'm going to have weekly one-to-ones with every single one of them. I don't care where they're based. So I needed to adapt my schedule to that. I had monthly check-ins, I had quarterly check-ins, and I had the annual review. And then in the annual review, aside from the annual review, once a year, I would also have a conversation with them about their aspirations. And that no one does. Like, I know no people manager that would just, or maybe I don't know enough people managers, that's also possible, that would sit down and talk about people's aspirations, what they wanted to do in their career. And then one thing that I noticed is that this career path document that I put together, no one has it. There's very few people that have it, very early on in their career. And so what I would do is I would ask my team members to have a career path document themselves too. And then constantly tell me, like, okay, what direction do you want to evolve? Do you want to develop? In what direction do you want to develop in? And so to me, that was very important, because that also helped a lot with trust and collaboration, because they they saw that I had an interest beyond, you need to just do your job and that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It sounds to me like you're acting like an owner, despite being in a massive corporation with lots of layers above and around you all the time. You own your team and world, and that allows them to see that you care and you're engaged, and they want to be engaged too, which is really magical. And I would guess that some of your experiences in startups, I think that when I show up as good as I can, I'm also acting like an owner, but I would credit that to my startup days much more than I would the system and the bureaucracy of big companies, which
Hmm.
almost makes it easy to not act like an owner, right? Because you're like, well, there's other owners all
Um,
around and I'm being told what I need to do, so I'll just do those things, when in fact, that isn't the secret to success.
Yes, I agree, but I think in my career I've only worked for one company that was highly bureaucratic, and it really felt like I couldn't own anything. The rest of the companies, even if they have been big, there's always been like that startup, the typical startup mentality thing that they talk about.
Yes.
There's always been that in the business that I've worked in. Even when I was choosing roles, I wanted to be specified that that you would need to work in a fast-paced environment, meaning that there would be change happening regularly and that you would be able to own change as well. So it's usually been in businesses that had that startup mentality. So for example, when I was working for it's not a well-known company in the US, but they're the biggest sports retailer in the world, Decathlon. I was working for the country, so for the UK, and they were growing at that point. So even though it was a really large business, it was an arm of the business that was basically like a startup.
Mm,
So that's I've always tried to stay in those sort of businesses where I would be able to drive change as well.
I love that. Okay, so what about this COVID experience has changed how you manage today?
um, I think it solidified my leadership style. And what I mean by this is when I was in this company, Decathlon, back in London, I was formally trained as a coach because I had always had a passion about teaching. Coaching is not teaching, in my opinion, but I had a passion for it, and I had a passion to develop my teams. And coaching was something that I ended up really, really, really loving. Once I don't know if I would call it that I mastered it, but I got really good at it in that business. And it's something that I wanted to incorporate into my leadership style. So instead of telling people what to do, is asking them the questions, or helping them put in place the tools that are going to help them understand what the direction that they want to take. And so through the pandemic and through the years that I was with them, I was able to put in practice a lot of my learnings in coaching in previous business, and I loved it. I think it just changed the way that I lead my teams, and I think it makes a huge difference. But a lot of people don't know about it, or don't implement it effectively sometimes. So yeah.
Sounds like a power combo of skills to be able to wear a coaching hat and do that. And then the teaching hat, which I agree is completely different, and do that really well. Those two things combined, I want to be on your team. It sounds like an incredible world that you're creating for people. I doubt I'm the only one. We're approaching time here, but the question we always end with on 99 Humans is just for a piece of advice for our listeners who are hearing what sounds like you have learned to master, and in some cases comes naturally to you. What advice do you have for folks who are striving to get there?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to say the career path again. So
I
what I
love
mean
it.
by this, yeah, but what I mean is like no one does this in the beginning of their career, and many people don't discover it until much later on in their career, and that could have made such a big difference for them. But someone said once that people who are successful, they're successful because they know where they're going.
Mm.
And I think that having this document where you're putting a draft, or what would you want to do in the next 20 years, makes a huge difference in your career. And I have made a lot of moves in my career, sometimes risky moves, just because I thought they were going to help me get where I wanted to get to, and they have. And so I think that's very important. And a lot of people don't know that can help them.
So I'll put you on the spot a little bit because we have heard this a few times, and I love the
Oh,
idea, and I agree that I don't think you get to success on accident.
well,
But if a daunting white piece of paper, is staring me at the face and I'm trying to envision myself 20 years from now, what does that actually look like? Like, what kinds of things do you recommend people think through or write down or draft if they're going to put one of these together?
Um, how do you make yourself different from other candidates then? From other people in your industry. In my case, in the very beginning of my career, it was about languages. Like I knew no one in Spain would speak 5 languages. I knew it. So if I were to ever compete in a role that needed languages or that needed an international aspect to it, I would be very competitive. When it came down to for example, paid media, I got really good at understanding understanding the customer, which at the end of the day should be the center of everything. So how do I do this when I don't have an analytics team? Well, then you go through customer service. Like at different stages in your career, you need to, I know that I'm going back to the career path document, but you need to identify what are the skills that are going to make you get into the next role, but then also they're going to make you different from other people, more competitive. And I think that's key.
In your career, you are the product. And I hear you using that marketing language. Like, what are the unique selling points of your application, of your path? Super smart advice. I need to refresh my sort of vision here as well, and definitely inspiring. Where can people find you out there who want to connect?
Definitely on LinkedIn.
Okay. Put your profile in the show notes then for this one. Alexia, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with 99 Humans today. It's great to meet you.
James, same. Nice to have me. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Bye.